You are listening to the Showbiz Side Hustle podcast, powered by PerformerPreneur. I am your host here, Nicole Louise Geddes, and together we'll be delving into all of the ways that a showbiz side hustle can support you now and long into the future. So sit back, relax, and listen in, and together let's get inspired to take action to create the life, future, and business of your dreams. This episode is sponsored by the Showbiz Side Hustle Handbook, available on Kindle and in paperback over on Amazon. Follow the simple tasks laid out over 3 easy-to-action sections and effectively build a strong business foundation for a successful showbiz side hustle. Hello and welcome to episode number 18. We are running through these episodes. I hope you guys listening in today have started with me from the beginning of this process, in which case you'll know that today is a member spotlight day, and we are bringing in and talking to one of my fabulous members, in fact, a VIP client. She's taking the option to do more and more one-to-one sessions with me to build her business and her showbiz side hustle successfully, and that is Hannah. Welcome, Hannah.
Hello, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. It's always kind of nerve-wracking to have the spotlight on, but because we're performers, we don't mind so much.
Exactly.
So, I'm really grateful for you allowing me to delve into your business, your thoughts, your past and your present, to highlight and spotlight to the listeners what is possible for them and where we have come from and where we are going. And you, my lovely, are my ideal client. So there's been talk about that in the past episodes, niching down, ideal client, values, whys, beliefs, all of this stuff, all of these things, vision. And it occurred to me that obviously all my members are ideal clients, but you have meticulously followed, unwittingly, I'm sure, the whole process of what I believe the transition is from performer to performer. So before I go into any detail about you being my ideal client, please do tell everybody who you are, what you do, and your business name, which will be linked in the blurb below.
Yeah, of course. Hi, thank you for having me. So I'm Hannah. I run HVA, and that provides administrative and business support to entertainment-based businesses. It's freelance outsourcing support that's completely flexible. Basically, businesses can kind of dip in and out as and when they need it, really. But essentially, yeah, that's HVA in a nutshell. A lot of admin, taking on that boring, and I put that in like little brackets because not everyone enjoys it, but taking on that time-consuming work so that the business owners can just focus on actually the bit that they built their business for,
which is
essentially that's it.
Yeah,
exactly. But that's the bit that everyone wants to be doing, the bit that you started the business for. But sadly, without good admin in the background and all the clogs whirling away, businesses can't thrive properly. And it's just been one of those over the years, and with my experiences anyway as a performer and everything, and working with different companies. And you can see that in some companies that you work for, and that's no criticism, that's just a fact. And so, yeah, when HVA started off as like a little niggle in my brain, I was thinking, okay, this could work, because actually people don't appreciate the need for good admin, and people don't want to do it, essentially. So give it to me.
I don't have to tell you that I'm sold, because Hannah does help me as a VA with my businesses. But before we go there, I'd like the listeners, if they're watching on YouTube, they'll definitely be able to see the enthusiasm in what you have chosen to do as a side hustle, as a business. And I think you'll be able to hear it on the podcast as well. And this is awesome, because so many people are umming and ahhing about what to do. And if we go back to the episode that I speak about super you, what are your superpowers? What excites you? What brings you joy? And although you're pointing out every single thing that I kind of shy away from in terms of admin and boring and doesn't bring me joy, there are other people, there's people that do find joy in the things that you don't want to do. And are you that person, listener, for somebody else in a different kind of genre or the same thing? So I think it's really exciting and interesting to know that you have picked a niche that you feel aligned to, excited by, and obviously have the knowledge and ability to do successfully. But we're going to go right to the beginning, because I have just said you're my ideal client. And when I speak about Performerpreneur, I am speaking to performers who have that niggle, who have that understanding, who are brave enough, because it does take some guts to kind of open their eyes and say out loud, or or start to come to terms with the fact that performing might not be the long game. And it is for some, and hopefully, we can dip in and out of it and do some bits and some not. But actually, ultimately, Hannah used to perform, or still could if she wasn't, and I'm going to allude to the next bit, if she hadn't had a beautiful little baby recently. She was a performer for Manic Stage Production. She was a fabulous performer. She went on the cruise ships for my other business, Manic, and many other contracts and exciting performing roles and gigs. But then I just said, you became a parent. You're now a mum to beautiful Madeline. And in that transition from performer to entrepreneur, there was this performerpreneur element. There was this side hustle that started, and the two ran very beautifully and seamlessly alongside each other. Now, I'm not going to lie, people. We know that this takes effort, and we know that it's a struggle sometimes. But Hannah, you are the ideal client because you started in time. This was all set up and started, and the process seamlessly followed, ready and in time for you becoming a mum. Which, how old's Madeline now, my darling?
Oh, she's just about to turn 7 months, so it's flying by.
It does fly by.
Literally flying by.
Tell the listeners where that thought started, because you were a performer and you now have a business. At what point did you think, and what made you think that there might be some brilliance in having that side hustle, that reoccurring revenue elsewhere?
Yeah, so I was a performer, and that was my full-time job. Graduated college, I got my first contract, had another contract, had that lovely little period. And then when I moved up to Newcastle to be with my partner. We went on tour together. That was wonderful. And then we kind of decided to stay in Newcastle for a little bit. And my job is as a performer. The region has got much better, but when I moved up here, there wasn't a lot of options, particularly dance-based. And so being full-time as a performer was a struggle. And I've now added in a distance. I used to live in Surrey, so getting into London for auditions was fairly simple. And I could go do the audition and get back to some form of work without any real issue. I've added in distance, cost, etc. And it just wasn't really, it was always a struggle. And I found as the years went on, I did have really busy periods, and I've loved it. And I've had some fantastic experiences. I've traveled with the work that I've done. I've absolutely adored it. However, it was getting to the point where actually my why for performing essentially became, well, I've got bills to pay. And I found that I was taking on work, accepting work in conditions that I don't think is necessarily they don't align to me anymore.
Yeah.
I was quite far into my performer career by this point. I was taking on these gigs for the sake of the paycheck. And I just found, and it was a combination of things. It wasn't just that. I was starting to feel a little bit, I don't want to say burnt out by it, because I don't think it wasn't a burnt out feeling, but I was just starting to feel a bit sort of like bogged down by the grind of being completely freelance as a performer. And I'd always said, I've always had that head on my shoulders where I think a little bit more logically. And I know that, especially as a dancer, I think that's the thing. Your body does take you to a point. Yes, I think as a dancer now you can get a lot further on in your career than you used to. But compared to being a singer and actor, you do get to a point, and it's a lot younger, where you stop. And that's just the way it is. And I had always known that. I wanted to go as far as I could in my career, but I knew that I would have to have something else in the background. And I've always had an interest in sort of events management. Years and years ago, I worked at a golf club. I was very, very lucky. I had an amazing boss there who really trained me up on that side of things as well. So, you know, I'm in Newcastle, I'm gigging, I'm trying to apply for event management style roles. And I either wasn't getting them because I don't have a nice university degree in that. I went to Performing Arts College. I didn't go to uni to do that. Or I was having interviews with companies who understandably were not going to be happy if I went, oh, I've got a gig, so I'm not going to be here for a couple of days. That just doesn't work in the traditional working sector, really. I know it's not the same for everyone, but like bog standard businesses, it's not going to work that way. And I just found that I was kind of hitting a wall there. And actually, the more I was thinking about it, the more I was like, well, I love entertainment. So I started applying for agents' assistants and anything that I could that was sort of the behind the scenes of an entertainment business.
Yep.
And again, I was kind of hitting some bumps with it. I was either not local. A lot of agencies in particular, a lot of them are based in London. I'm not local, so therefore I wasn't even really getting a look in. Or companies that I was speaking to were small, 1 or 2 people, you know, kind of start-uppy, that had kind of got to their point where they're ready for an expansion. But when I'm talking to them, they can't actually offer anything that's going to appeal to me as a person working for them. They couldn't guarantee hours, couldn't guarantee that there's going to be work all year round. The fee wasn't going to be very good. You know, things like that actually, when you break it down, you go, well, I can't live like this, you know. And so it was that combination of things where I'm like, well, people need this support. There's now a need. I can see quite clearly there's a need for this support. Companies need to be able to have someone to do this work. Sorry, I won't not outsource at that point. And I was umming and ahhing and, you know, scouring job sites and all of that. And I'd seen a few things for virtual assistant before. I think I'd even looked into just a general virtual assistant kind of business that you can sign up to. And, you know, if you're approved, you get a bit of work, like an agency, I suppose. And I just remember I was sat outside in our garden. It was a gorgeous sunny day. I was sat outside and it was like literally a light bulb. And I thought, hold on, why don't I be a virtual assistant, but for entertainment-based businesses? And I've still got the piece of paper, the A4 piece of paper. I wrote all these little ideas down, everything that I thought I could offer, the services that I could offer. Because I had done this sort of work in different formats. So I'd done an internship with an entertainment agency. My partner has his own production company. I do a lot of admin for him. You know, we help each other out kind of thing. So I have a lot of experience in it, but I just found that I kept on hitting these like bollards essentially, where it was like, well, I wasn't going to be able to go down the traditional employment route. At the same time, I was still performing. I wanted the flexibility to say, well, I've got a gig for this weekend and it's away for 3 days. So yeah, exactly. I'm off. And so, yeah, that was essentially how HVA came about. I did really research it. I made sure to really look into it. I made sure to look into who was actually offering this to our sector. And there wasn't anyone that was specialising in it. There was 1 or 2 people that when you kind of Googled, they came up. And yes, they might service 1 or 2 businesses within entertainment, but they weren't specialist in that necessarily. And so that was essentially how HVA became a thing. And I literally just took a dive into
it.
Yeah, literally.
Listening now who has read my book or follows my Insta is in the free Facebook group. I mean, the members who already know you, anyone that's read my book will see the absolute synergy of why Hannah is an ideal client. Like your description there, and it's a brave admission, really, because in the book I write that we're all thinking it, and not many people dare say it out loud. And when you get to that point where you feel it, it still feels very vulnerable to start saying, well, hold on, the career doesn't align with how I feel anymore. It doesn't excite me. Like all the things you've said, like my heart is pumping because I know that you are not the only one. I wasn't the only one. But so many people don't realize that they're not the only one either. And it feels very heavy and it feels very daunting to be at that period. So I'm hoping the listeners are listening and it's resonating with many of them, and they feel empowered that, you know, this is part of the journey of being a performer.
1,000%.
Point where you have outgrown the traditional performer box. And that's where I'm hoping to create this wonderful movement of PerformerPreneur. So move, evolve, create, take your passion and profit from it in a different way. And so then it leads me to say, and to reflect on everything you've just said about how you then took your skills, took your passion, took your understanding of the industry, took your performer head and placed it and moved it and evolved and created. And so, you know, you're literally saying and living what I hope so many more people will dare to live and breathe, that you can transition, you can be multi-passionate, you can take your skills and transfer them. And you down, you found your ideal client, and they will be a version of you and I and your partner. You found that, you've understood it, you know where your strengths lie. You have mentioned in there that you've got no formal qualifications. Again, that is something that I cheerlead. Like, we don't need this stuff.
No, I took in COVID, actually, obviously we had a lot of time off, and I always been more academic, and I love learning and taking on new skills. I love it. And I used that opportunity because I'd applied for a few positions in 2019, started 2020, the event management side of things. And I thought, well, actually, no, I'm not going to let people use this as, you know, the fact that on my CV there wasn't a qualification. So I used COVID and I did some online courses, qualified, you know, certified courses. But I did one in event management, and it was admin, PA and secretarial diploma or something like that. But I thought, actually, this is an ideal opportunity because we never allow ourselves as before. We're always hustling for the next job and for the next gig. And it was actually an ideal opportunity to stop and just focus on putting these qualifications together. It wasn't like stuff that I didn't know before. I wasn't sat there going, oh, this is really, you know, wow, I've never heard of this before. It was all stuff I knew, but I couldn't formally say that I knew it. So I did those qualifications. So technically now I have qualifications, but it was never something that I set out to do necessarily. I just, that time was there that I could do it.
Well, and you and I have spoken about how from the outside looking in, that will help reassure people. We've worked together on like what's going to bring in the next higher, bigger paying client, like what do they need to see. But to get started, I'm saying to anybody listening, like, you don't need to know everything. You can fill the gaps and you can take the courses and you can get the knowledge, ask the questions as you're going along. And yes, they had that opportunity, and I absolutely praise you for doing so. And I think that it's definitely something we should all be doing, but I don't think it should be the thing that stops you from.
No, not at all. I don't, like I said, that was purely something to do in lockdown, really.
Oh no, and it's benefited you.
It has benefited, but it actually wouldn't have made any difference to the business. You know, I don't advertise the fact on my website or anything that I technically have these 2 diploma qualifications, because it doesn't mean anything to them. It meant something in a traditional, here's my CV, traditional job. That means something there. It's very,
and
it's different.
Imposter syndrome as well. I mean,
a little bit.
I took a team. Manic Stage Productions at the time was probably about 10 years old. Like, we had contracts, we had clients, we was working across the country, we had big clients. And then I decided to do a degree in performing arts management. I mean, I've been a performing arts manager for 10 years with a successful business, but something was stopping me from developing that internally for myself. So I had to do that. But again, would it have got to where it was without it? Yes. But did I need it to push myself further forward? Then yes.
And if it's something, it's something that you can do without affecting anything else. I don't, something that you do whilst still running the business. What's the harm? Yeah, like I said, I do enjoy learning, and I one day down the line I'd like to do a degree of some sort, because that wasn't my qualification at Performing Arts College. But it has nothing to do with my business. It's just because I want to do it, and I enjoy learning. So that's, but yeah, it doesn't mean anything, and it should never. So technically, when I started HBA, yes, I'd done my research into virtual assistants, kind of looked at business models. I found a fantastic group on Facebook that a woman has essentially like your membership, but for VAs, and she had loads of resources. But even things, like managing an email inbox and linking clients' emails into your own inbox, things like that, I actually didn't know how to do. And so you have to Google them. You have to have a look and do all these things. But I knew that I could do the work.
Another thing that you just pointed out there is that support. You've got support of me and the membership, and you've gone VIP with one-to-ones. You've just mentioned that you've been in another support network of VAs. And that's something, again, which highlights to me how you are this ideal client in my avatar. I should call it Hannah, because you are open to support, you're open to learning, you're open to filling the gaps, you're open to asking questions, you understand and have actioned the ideal client. You said something about your why change in your performer persona. So all of these things you have taken and you have understood and you've actioned, and that has, in my opinion, got you so swiftly to where you want to be, just in time for becoming a mother. So when I'm saying to performers, like, start your side hustle now, it can become an exit strategy for the industry. From the industry, it can become a support for your future self, like a financial support. You did that so kind of seamlessly. That you had the business now, and you've got beautiful Madeline, who's 7 months. So I don't suppose there's any regrets in starting it, but please do tell us, did you start it soon enough? Would you have said, what would your advice be to other people? Was Madeline on the, a glint in your eye as you were doing it so many years back, or how did that work?
I think I was getting I was starting to get very fed up with feeling like I, couldn't pay the bill. It sadly, it came down to financials. It came down to the fact that my gigging rota as such, and it was starting to, there's no guarantees as well with the freelance gigs. There was some work, and I worked for some companies and it was regular, which was fantastic, but there was other companies and it wasn't. And that's just the way it is. That's our industry as well. January comes around and I don't hear from anyone. No one wants to book a dance there because it's January. They've just spent all their money in December. So I was getting quite bogged down with the lack of finances, essentially. And, we had talked about starting a family. And I just knew the original plan for HVA was that it was going to be much more part-time. So the performing was still going to be the predominant part of my working life, but HVA was essentially going to be funding me to do that. I don't know how else to describe it, but I just felt that if I had work elsewhere that was kind of a constant, essentially, then it takes the pressure off me gigging. And it meant that I could actually be a bit more choosy about gigs. I didn't feel that I had to take everything because I needed the pay.
Well, remember, one of my taglines is support your industry career with a side hustle. Like
Yeah,
that's, you know, that is where people start. They just want that stability to support their industry career.
exactly. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I started off, I decided to launch HVA. I'm just trying to think of the timeline. It was a bit of a funny time for us. We'd gone through some things personally. And it had been a bit of a up and down year. And I launched HVA in kind of a bit of a, I was like, right, I'm just doing it. And it was a bit of a tough time for us. But I launched, it wasn't a we situation. And I'd contacted a woman that runs an entertainment agency who I'd spoken to and had a couple of conversations. She was looking a few months prior for someone to come in to the agency and provide admin support. Mm-hmm. But at the time, there was no guarantees or anything with the offer. So I contacted her and said, look, I'm starting this up. Would you be interested? And she said yes. And for a month, that was all she wanted to commit to and could afford at the time for this particular bit of work that she was doing. And so I was like, well, I've got a client. I'm going to launch. That's great. I've launched with a client. How fantastic. And it was, you know, it was great. And I did that little bit of work. But that was, you know, after that client, I was like, oh, hold on. I need to now keep this momentum going. And there was a good few months where I'd launched the business. Obviously, I'd had that month with this client, which kind of gave me a bit of confidence as well, which was great. But then I had a good few months before anyone else came through to HVA. And that, you know, I think that is something that people, it's not a case of starting a side hustle and all of a sudden this cash flow. I know that happens to some people. It depends on.
Well, I think that's the moment where some people will stop and some people will take stock.
Yes.
Stop or take stock. And the take stock is when you go, right, okay, what do I need to learn? I've had the tenacity. I've done the thing. I've put it out there. It is there in the universe. Now I need to take a step back. So I'm all about leaping, but then taking a step back, taking stock and assessing and reflecting and reviewing what you need to learn, what you need to ask help for, who you need to find, and that's where I'm sure you then started to unravel the process, build the why, build the vision, build the understanding, find the community, find the support, and then find many, many more ideal clients. So in terms of ideal clients, where the conversation started, I'd love to end in the, I mean, obviously there's loads more to talk about, but towards the end of this podcast, I'd love to end with how, you know, I and the other lady and many more clients that you work for, how they are the ideal client. I love the fact you're my ideal client and I'm actually yours as well. I'm creative. I hate the admin. And Hannah's learned a lot from me and our conversations in the same sense that I've learned a lot from her and our conversations in relation to our businesses. So let's go there. So when you're then pinning down who you want to work with, and I know that I'm not ideal in the sense that I'm erratic and I don't know what I'm doing some days, but that's the beauty of it. And you've pointed out that you are very much more systemed than that. So it's finding those people, isn't it, that you can resonate, align with and connect with, that become and help you to build your message, your ideal client.
Yes, 1000%. Entertainment, I want to keep it within that sector, partly because I love it, but partly because I know it. And I feel like that's a fantastic selling point to my ideal client. I've got a client at the moment, and it was one of the things she said in our initial conversation. She was like, I love the fact that I could say to you something about tights and you would know what I meant, know what tights I mean. Whereas someone else would think, oh, what, just tights from Primark? Like, of course I have an understanding of the industry. I've been in it for a very long time, and I have done a lot within it. So that was for me a thing where I thought, well, actually, no, this is worth sticking to, because it had been, like I said, after that first client, and it was like tumbleweed, I could have very easily, and it was suggested to me by a few different people, pivot, change your niche. Who else could you service? What sort of businesses? And I was adamant. Now, I have done work for other businesses and other types of industry, and that's great. You know, the fact that I can even do that's fantastic. But HVA is this, you know, that's what I want my business to be. So yeah, ideal client, it's quite broad in the sense of anyone that has their hand still in entertainment, performerpreneurs, everyone. I think originally when I set it up, I was thinking of entertainment agencies, because I think, or those style, you know, that higher performers do productions, that kind of thing, because I feel like my experience with them, they're a one person that's gone, I could run an entertainment agency, and they do it, but they don't realize the background stuff that's needed to keep that running. And then they get to a point where they're really busy. They tend, you know, that person tends to be gigging a lot as well to supplement the business, and they need that help, but they actually can't commit to having an employee. You know, that we're sold as a society, we're sold this idea that work should be an employer and an employee. And yeah, there are benefits that come with that and securities and stuff, but actually there's not. You know, I can offer the same work. I can offer the same sort of sense of security to that client, but there's no real commitment. And so that was the other big selling point that I feel like my business has. Everything's flexible and is on my clients' terms. They, you know, we all know what the industry is like. You know, January's dead. It's very, very few companies that have a lot of work in January. And then December's crazy. The summer's really busy. But this, you know, and our industry ebbs and flows, and that's just how it is. And so having that person that you can outsource to, and that's a big word within our sector, as I've come to realize, outsourcing is a bit like, ooh. But having that person that you can outsource to and just bring in during that busy time and say, I need help with this, please help me. And then that's
so in the last episode, speaking of ideal clients and clarity.
Yes.
So I spoke about clarity and spoke about ideal client, and I actually spoke about not necessarily needing 100% clarity, because actually what I then went on to say, and what I believe, is that the ideal client will start to tell you what they need and what they want. And you have just said that amongst that story there about ideal client, that they projected what they needed, what they wanted, they asked, and you were able to ebb and flow. I use those exact words as well. And you haven't listened to the last episode because it's not released yet. But it's the synergy. But yes, so it's exactly that. So you've taken your ideal client, you've opened up your heart and your mind, you've listened, you're moving, you're learning what their pain points are.
Yeah.
And you're building your business so professionally, strategically, wonderfully, and you know, that would happen with or without me, the membership Performerpreneur. It absolutely would. It started without us, and it will go on and on without us, I'm sure. But I'm loving that we are in this together at the moment.
Yeah.
Have become part of the Performerpreneur Serious Side Hustle Club, that you are a VIP client, that I can see your business brain just growing and growing and growing, your client opportunities growing, your clarity growing. And the one thing that I want to just pick up on again is people. You said people suggested you should open it up and open up your other people. Who are these other people? I'm not asking you that. I'm rhetorically. Who are these people? Because there's plenty of people with an opinion. And obviously I have an opinion, you have an opinion, the community has an opinion, but we've got an opinion based on real life experiences and understanding and building businesses and being a performer and wanting more and all of that. So find your people, listeners. If Hannah and I and my community are your people, come and join in. If any of this has resonated with you, if you're thinking, I feel like that, or I'm halfway there, or I'm being told X, Y, and Z by my gran, they have value in many areas of life. When it comes to building a business, when you are using your performer tenacity, understanding, background, education, excitement, then come and join people like Hannah and I that are living and breathing and doing it based on those foundations, because it would have been an absolute travesty, Hannah, if you had opened up and said, I am now a VA for everybody. And then, honestly, in my professional opinion, you wouldn't have got so far so quickly.
No,
messaging would have been all over the place. Your insecurities and your imposter syndrome about other sectors and other industries would have come to light super quickly. You are steadfast in your knowledge, and just listening to you in this podcast, you speak so eloquently about HVA and your ability to support performers, entertainment companies, industry professionals, industry agencies, and that shines through. And I think you know it, I know it, the listeners can hear it. If you guys listening can find a side hustle that you are passionate about, like Hannah, and knowledgeable about, even with gaps that you are willing to fill, and find the community that can support you, you have got a very, very successful financial stably financial situation and side hustle in the making. So what are your future dreams for HVA, for yourself? Do you want to go back to performing? Do you want your little girl to perform? Like, it would be nice to just end with kind of this big vision.
So I would like to go back to performing. I have said by the end of the year I would like to do a gig at least, but I had my baby in February, so I'm not putting any pressure on myself, on my body. I have been offered a few and they hadn't quite worked out logistically, because it's not as easy to just say I'm off for a gig anymore. So I do want to go back to performing. Obviously HVA, I just want to continue to grow, build my client base, deal with sort of different businesses. I have a really lovely sort of client list at the moment where it's very varied, and I love that. What the businesses offer to the entertainment sector, it's varied. It's brilliant. I love it, and the tasks are all really different. And maybe one day this will change, but at the moment I'm very much, if a company came to, or a client came to me and said, actually, this is what we need help with, as long as it's something that I feel like I can do, I'm very open to doing it, even though it might not be listed on my website as a task, because like we've just said, I'm listening to them as well as saying, well, this is what I can do. And I did a full rebrand really of all my services based on sort of conversations I had this time last year when I launched my website. So I'm constantly evolving that. So I want HVA to just grow and grow and grow. And then so in terms of performing, I would like to start to pivot. And actually, I want the big plan down the line is HVA is essentially like the umbrella company. And I really would like to go into sort of choreography, creative direction, that kind of line of work, produce just and I'm not talking about, massive theatre shows or anything, a really nice dinner show, something like that I would like to have the opportunity to do that. I feel like HVA could be a really nice sort of a banner for different things down the line, where it becomes almost like not a one-stop shop, but that kind of idea. So that's kind of that. I mean, life is got a lot of twists and turns. We're still waiting on confirmation on, as a family, what we're about to go and do, where if we're staying in the UK for a bit, if we're not, there's lots of things up in the air, but that's what's exciting. And that's the other beautiful thing about HVA, because actually it doesn't matter where I am in the world, because I can continue to work. And again, was another reason I wanted to have a business like this. And just Madeline, have all my baby cuddles, and I will yes, I would like her to start dancing, but we haven't said because my partner's an Irish dancer as well, so we'll get her to try both. But if she turned around and said I don't want to do any, that would be fine as well. We're not going to force her to do it.
I dreaded that Jack might want to do it, because it's just so, we know that the highs and the lows, but when we're parents, we let them do whatever they want to do.
Exactly.
So your big vision is beautiful. It's there, and I'm super proud of you for having that and for saying your truth out loud, because that's what we all need to be remembering. Like, what's the next 5 years? What's the big picture? What are we doing it for? We're doing it for our family, we're doing it for our flexibility, we're doing it for our stability, we're doing it for, you know, the performer in me still, or the entrepreneur, or the performerpreneur. The conversation the conversation could have carried on and on and on. There's loads more that I want to ask you and know, and I'm sure that there's people with questions. Guys listening, if Hannah has sparked even the smallest light bulb flicker of flame, and you think this sounds like me, I want to know more, I want to join in, then obviously you know who I am and where to find me. But Hannah, who are you in terms of online? Where can we find you? And so people can, one, approach you for work, but two, maybe advice, support, and know that they'll be welcomed into our community now that we've met you and got an understanding of you.
Definitely. Well, on Instagram, which I tend to be on a bit more, I say that I am starting to come back on a bit more. Sadly, it took us a little hiatus because I couldn't do it all, and Madeline had to come first. So I am at HVA_ents on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, and the same content kind of gets transferred over. I'm also on LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn, both business and personal. And I am busy trying to utilize LinkedIn because I feel like that's going to be a very good place for me in terms of growing my business. So please do come and connect with me on there. I'm Hannah Gordon over there. And then I have my website, which is hva-ents.co.uk. And that has all the information about me, about the business, and what's on offer. That's kind of it. Yeah.
And if you're in the free Facebook group, which you're all more than welcome to join, and you've got any questions for Hannah or myself, it is Hannah Gordon. So just at her and me, and we will answer anything. If this podcast has inspired you, I'm sure it has, Hannah, because you literally have spoken every single truth that I know I felt back in the day, and that my clients are speaking and saying. So I'm really grateful for your honesty and your transparency.
Thank you. But then in a way, that's quite nice to hear. Obviously, it's not a checklist, but the fact that it felt like the paths have kind of aligned in that sense, that like actually the way I followed it is kind of this idea of it. I mean, it's nice to hear that actually you're going, oh, this is great. You've followed these steps, even though it was all inadvertently doing so.
Yes, and more often than not, and I really do genuinely believe that is because of this performer background. We've just kind of got this ability to leap and try and do and fail and succeed. That's why I was saying to a client the other day, and I'm going to end with this, listeners. Entrepreneurs don't have the creativity that we have. I feel that a performer will, if they allow themselves to and believe that they can be, they have the potential to become a more successful entrepreneur because of this creativity, because of this tenacity, because of this understanding of rejection, and all these things we've been through and successes. It really is the most wonderful starting point for entrepreneurship, because we've been through so many of the lessons already.
And I think performers feel a bit boxed in, and I don't think always, but I don't think they realize the transferable skill set that comes from being a performer. Like everything you've just mentioned there, they're actually the skills that other people want and need in any business. And I don't think we're never trained to think that we're given our toolkit of how to perform, whether that's singing, dancing, acting, all of the above, and then you just think, well, all I can do is this. But actually, how can you do that? Because those skills are going to help you outside of that as well. And I don't think we realize that all the time.
And you and I are living proof. And I know that more people feel it, but not enough people shout about it. So the Performerpreneur movement, it is on fire today with Hannah and I, telling you all that you can do it too. Please do hook up with Hannah, send me a DM, join the group, find the membership. However you need to have more of this, then there are avenues open to you. Hannah, I'm going to leave it there because as I say, we could just keep going on and on and on.
Yeah. Episode 19, 20.
But I am very grateful for your time. I'm very grateful for your friendship, for your business, for your support, and for your wonderfulnness. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful. I'm really glad we could do this. This is so exciting.
Big love, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, guys, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you for joining me here on the Showbiz Side Hustle podcast. So until next time, please do take a little bit of action, that very first step, and make sure that you are doing something for you and your Showbiz side hustle this week to move you forward and get you heading quickly and swiftly and strategically towards success.